Captain Jake Morrison stood on the deck of his ship, the USS Defender. He looked up at the sky and saw something that made his heart race. 3 huge silver ships were coming down through the clouds. They looked like giant teardrops falling from heaven. It had been 3 months since the aliens first talked to Earth. 3 months since humans learned they were not alone in the universe. The whole world was still trying to understand what this meant. The aliens called themselves Zephyrians. They had long arms and legs, and their skin was blue like crystals. When sunlight hit their skin, it sparkled and shined. They said they came in peace. They wanted to help Earth. Jake's radio crackled to life. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Lisa Carter. The alien ships are asking to land on your ship. What do you say? Jake looked at his crew. Lieutenant Ben Hayes stood to his right. Commander Amy Foster stood to his left. Both of them looked nervous, but ready. Jake had picked his best people for this meeting. Tell them they can come aboard, Jake said into his radio. We're ready for them. The airlock on Jake's ship made a loud hissing sound as it opened. The Zephyrian delegation walked out slowly. Their movements were smooth and graceful, like they were floating instead of walking. Their big eyes looked around at the humans with interest, but Jake thought he saw something else in their eyes too. Was it sadness or maybe pity? The leader of the group stepped forward. He was taller than the others, and his blue skin seemed to glow brighter. A small device on his chest began to speak in English. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Kethmer. We come with an offer that is very important for your species to survive. Dr. Helen Brooks stepped forward. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, even though she had never seen real aliens before 3 months ago. She held a tablet in her hands, ready to take notes. Ambassador, we are honored that you came to visit us. What brings you to our world? Helen asked. The ambassador's crystal face changed. The glow dimmed a little. We have been watching your species for many years. Your world faces terrible dangers from space. We want to offer you protection under the Galactic Protection Treaty. Jake felt confused. He looked at his officers. They looked confused too. Protection from what? Jake asked. The ambassador's big eyes seemed to get even bigger. From the Devourers, the Void Hunters, the Crimson Horde, surely you know about these threats? The humans all looked at each other. No one had ever heard of these names before. Colonel Frank Miller was Earth's military expert for dealing with aliens. He had been quiet until now. Ambassador, Frank said slowly, we have never heard of these things you talk about. We have never seen any Devourers or Void Hunters or Crimson Horde. The ambassador looked shocked. He turned to talk to the other Zephyrians in their own language. Their voices sounded like music, but worried music. After a minute, he turned back to the humans. This is unexpected, the ambassador said. How? Can you not know about the great threats of the galaxy? Jake stepped forward. Maybe you should explain to us what these threats are? We've been looking at space for a long time, and we've never seen anything dangerous out there. The ambassador's skin got even dimmer. The galaxy is full of dangers. Most young species like yours need protection from the ancient evils that travel between stars. That is why we have the Galactic Protection Treaty. Dr. Brooks raised her hand like a student in class. Can you tell us more about this treaty? Of course, the ambassador said. When a species joins the treaty, we put defense stations around their world. Our ships patrol their space. We keep them safe from the horrors that destroy entire planets. Admiral Carter's voice came through Jake's radio again. Captain, ask them what they want in return. Jake nodded. Ambassador, what would Earth have to give you for this protection? The ambassador's crystal skin flickered. The protected species provides resources to help maintain the defense systems. They also follow the rules of the Galactic Council. It is a small price to pay for safety. Commander Foster whispered to Jake. This sounds like they want to control us. Jake thought the same thing. Ambassador, we need to understand something. You say these threats are everywhere in the galaxy? You say they destroy planets and kill entire species. But we've never seen any sign of them. Our telescopes look deep into space every day. Our satellites watch for danger. Where are these threats? The ambassador looked uncomfortable. The other Zephyrians moved closer to him like they were protecting him. The threats ... They are very clever. They hide in the dark between stars. They strike quickly and then disappear. But surely we would see some evidence, Dr. Brooks said. Destroyed planets, debris, energy signatures, something. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Your species is ... unusual. Most species we meet are peaceful. They develop space travel for exploration and trade. But you humans are different. Different how? Jake asked. You have turned your space technology into weapons. You think about fighting even when you explore. This makes the threats cautious about your area of space. Lieutenant Hayes leaned close to Jake and whispered, Are they saying we're too dangerous for the space monsters? Jake was starting to think the same thing. Ambassador, are you telling us that these threats avoid Earth because they think we're dangerous? The ambassador's crystal skin went almost transparent. Your species has a reputation. Word travels fast in the galaxy. The threats you fear may fear you more. The room went quiet. Jake could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the breathing of his crew. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If the scariest things in the galaxy were afraid of humans, what did that say about humans? Ambassador, Jake said finally, I think we need to know more about these threats, and more about your Galactic Protection Treaty. This meeting is just the beginning, the ambassador nodded slowly. Yes, Captain Morrison, I believe you are right. There is much more to discuss. As the Zephyrians left the ship, Jake looked out at the stars. For the first time in his life, he wondered if humans were the ones other species needed protection from. The thought was both frightening and exciting. The universe had just become a much more interesting place. The big meeting room on the USS Defender was packed with people. Admiral Lisa Carter had called in the best minds from every country on Earth. Scientists, military leaders, and diplomats filled every seat. Everyone wanted to hear what the aliens had to say. Ambassador Kethmer stood at the front of the room with his team of Zephyrians. Their blue crystal skin looked darker than before, like they were worried about something. The translation device on the ambassador's chest glowed softly as he prepared to speak. You must understand, the ambassador began. The galaxy is not a safe place. Most species need protection from the ancient threats that travel between worlds. Dr. Helen Brooks sat in the front row, her tablet ready to record everything. She raised her hand. Ambassador, yesterday you mentioned creatures called devourers. Can you tell us more about them? The ambassador's skin dimmed even more. The devourers are creatures of pure hunger. They consume entire worlds, leaving nothing behind. They have destroyed thousands of civilizations across the galaxy. Planets that once held billions of lives are now empty rocks floating in space. A murmur went through the room. General Patricia Stone, who led Earth's space defense program, leaned forward. How do they destroy planets? What weapons do they use? They do not use weapons as you understand them, the ambassador replied. They eat. They consume all life, all energy, all matter. A planet that takes millions of years to form can be devoured in days. Colonel Frank Miller raised his hand. What about these void hunters you mentioned? The ambassador's crystal features shifted into what might have been fear. The void hunters are pirates and raiders. They strike from the darkness of space, attacking merchant ships and small colonies. They take slaves and resources, leaving destruction behind. They are cruel and without mercy. Captain Jake Morrison stood up. Ambassador, how exactly would your protection work? What would you do to keep Earth safe? We would place orbital defense platforms around your world, the ambassador explained. Our fleet would patrol your star system. When threats approach, we would drive them away or destroy them. Admiral Carter spoke from the back of the room. And what would Earth provide in return? The ambassador hesitated. Protected worlds provide resources to maintain the defense systems, metal, energy, food. They also follow the laws of the Galactic Council and allow our ships to use their space. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Dr. Brooks asked the question. Everyone was thinking, Ambassador, we appreciate your offer, but we need to understand something. We've been studying space for decades. We've never seen any sign of these threats you describe. Where are they? The Zephyrian delegation looked at each other. They made musical sounds in their own language, like they were having a quick discussion. Finally, the ambassador turned back to the humans. The threats ... they avoid systems like yours, he admitted. Systems like ours? General Stone asked sharply. What makes Earth different from other worlds? The ambassador's skin became almost transparent. Your species is ... unusual. Most civilizations develop peaceful space travel. They explore and trade and make friends with other species. But humans are different. Commander Amy Foster, who had been quiet until now, stood up. Different how? You have weaponized your space technology, the ambassador said. Your first satellites carried bombs. Your space stations are designed to be defended. Even your exploration ships carry weapons. Most species use space for peace, you use it for war. Lieutenant Ben Hayes whispered to Captain Morrison. Is he saying we're the scary ones? The ambassador must have heard him because he turned toward them. Your species has a reputation in the galaxy. Other civilizations speak of humans with ... caution. Admiral Carter walked to the front of the room. Ambassador, I need you to be completely honest with us. Are you saying that these galactic threats avoid Earth because they're afraid of humans? The ambassador's crystal skin flickered rapidly. The Devourers prefer worlds that cannot fight back. The Void Hunters attack weak targets. Your world sends signals that you are neither weak nor unable to fight. Dr. Brooks looked at her tablet, then back at the ambassador. What kind of signals? Your radio and television broadcasts show violence and war. Your satellites and space stations are clearly military in nature. Your governments spend enormous resources on weapons and defense. To other species, Earth appears to be a fortress world. The room erupted in surprised voices. People turned to each other, talking excitedly. Admiral Carter had to call for quiet. Ambassador, she said when the room was silent again, most species you've met are peaceful. They don't prepare for war. Is that correct? Yes, the ambassador replied. War is rare in the galaxy. Most conflicts are solved through discussion and trade. Species that survive to reach space have learned to work together. Colonel Miller stood up. But humans reach space while still fighting each other. That is extremely unusual, the ambassador said. Most species have world peace before they develop space travel. Humans achieve spaceflight while still divided into competing nations. This is ... concerning to other species. General Stone asked. Concerning how? The ambassador was quiet. For a long moment. There are stories, legends, about species that carry war to the stars. Most believe they are just stories to frighten children. But when the galaxy learned about humans... What? Captain Morrison prompted. Some species thought the legends might be true. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. What do these legends say? The ambassador's skin was now so pale it was almost clear. They speak of warrior species that do not seek peace. Species that are born to fight. The legends say these species are dangerous to the entire galaxy. The room was completely silent. Everyone was staring at the ambassador. Finally, Admiral Carter spoke. Ambassador, are you telling us that the galaxy thinks humans are the monsters? The ambassador's voice was barely audible through the translator. Some do, but we Zephyrians believe you can be guided toward peace. That is why we offer protection, to help you join the galactic community safely. Lieutenant Hayes stood up. What if we don't want to join? What if we want to stay independent? The ambassador looked shocked. But you cannot survive alone. The galaxy is too dangerous. You need protection. Captain Morrison smiled grimly. Ambassador, I think you're missing something important about humans. What is that? We've been protecting ourselves for thousands of years. We've fought wars. On land, sea, air, and now space. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters. We've never needed anyone else to protect us. The ambassador's crystal skin began to glow brighter, but not with confidence. It was fear. But the threats from space ... have been avoiding us, Admiral Carter finished. You said so yourself. They're afraid of us. The ambassador looked at his team, then back at the humans. What are you saying? Dr. Brooks stood up, her eyes bright with understanding. We're saying that maybe Earth doesn't need protection, Ambassador. Maybe Earth is the protection. The room filled with excited voices again. For the first time since the aliens arrived. The humans were smiling. The ambassador and his team looked very small and very frightened. The galaxy was about to learn something new about the species from the small blue planet. 2 weeks later, the research ship UES Discovery floated at the edge of Earth's solar system. Dr. Helen Brooks worked at her computer station, studying the information the Zephyrians had given them about the galactic threats. The ship's captain, Ryan Clark, had volunteered his vessel for this important mission. Helen, you need to see this right now, called Dr. Kevin Martinez from across the room. He was the ship's expert on space physics, and his screen showed readings from the robot. Probes they had sent out to patrol the outer system. Dr. Brooks hurried over to his station. Commander Amy Foster, who had been assigned to the mission as the military representative, followed close behind. What are we looking at, Kevin? I've been studying the energy patterns the Zephyrians say belong to these void hunters, Martinez explained. He pointed to his screen, which showed wave patterns and numbers. According to their information, we should be seeing traces of their ship engines in the nearby star systems. And what did you find? Foster asked. Nothing at all. Either these threats don't exist, or they're staying far away from our entire air of space. Martinez brought up a map of the local galaxy on his screen. But here's the really interesting part. I've been listening to alien communications, and I'm picking up emergency signals from the Zephyrian homeworld. Back on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was in a secure video meeting with Admiral Lisa Carter and the military leadership. The discovery of the emergency signals had changed everything about how they viewed the situation. Sir, Morrison reported. From his office, our investigation suggests that the Zephyrians are the ones who are actually under attack. Their homeworld is being threatened by something they call the Crimson Horde. Admiral Carter's face was serious on the video screen. Are you telling me they want to use Earth as a military base for their own war? That's exactly what it looks like, sir, and there's more. Agent Julie Roberts from Intelligence has been studying their technology. Julie, a young woman in civilian clothes, appeared on the screen. She looked tired but excited. Admirals, the Zephyrian protection technology is actually much less advanced than what we've developed. Their weapons are basically plasma throwers. They're effective against their usual enemies, but nothing like our kinetic weapons or nuclear missiles. General Patricia Stone leaned toward her camera. Are you saying we're more advanced than they are, in terms of military technology? Absolutely. They've been part of a peaceful galactic community for thousands of years. They focused on trade and diplomacy. We've spent the same time learning how to fight wars. Admiral Carter was quiet for a moment, thinking, what about these other threats? They mentioned the Devourers and Void Hunters? Julie looked at her notes. We found some evidence that they exist, but they seem to be very rare. Most of the galaxy hasn't seen them in hundreds of years. The Zephyrians might be using old stories to scare new species into joining their protection treaty. Back on the Discovery, Dr. Brooks was making her own disturbing discoveries. She had been analyzing the Galactic Protection Treaty documents that the Zephyrians had provided. Captain Clark, she called to the ship's commander, I need to show you something important. Ryan Clark came over to her station. He was the experienced space captain who had served on many exploration missions. What did you find, Helen? I've been reading through the treaty documents. Look at this section here. She pointed to her screen. Every species that joins the treaty has to provide military ships and soldiers when the Galactic Council asks. For them, that sounds like they're building an army, Clark said. That's what I thought too. And look at this list of species that have joined the treaty in the last 50 years. Dr. Brooks showed him another document, 23 different civilizations. All of them were told they needed protection from galactic threats. Commander, Foster joined them. How many of these species actually encountered the threats before joining, according to their own records? None of them. They all joined based on the Zephyrians' warnings about potential dangers. Captain Clark frowned. So they're recruiting species to fight their war by scaring them about threats that might not even exist, Dr. Brooks nodded. And every species that joins becomes dependent on them for protection. They can't leave the treaty without losing their defense systems. On Earth, the investigation was revealing even more disturbing information. Agent Julie Roberts had been working with a team of codebreakers to translate intercepted Zephyrian communications. Admiral Carter, Julie reported in another video conference, we've decoded more of their internal communications. The Zephyrians are not the peaceful species they claim to be. Explain, Admiral Carter said. They're the leaders of something called the Galactic Protection Alliance. It's basically a military confederation that controls most of the known galaxy. They use the threat of ancient dangers to convince species to join, then use those species, resources, and soldiers for their own purposes. Captain Morrison leaned forward. What kind of purposes? Expanding their territory and fighting wars against species that refuse to join. The Crimson Horde they mentioned. They're not monsters. They're a group of species that rejected the Protection Alliance and formed their own confederation. Admiral Carter was quiet for a long moment. So we're looking at a galactic war between two groups, and the Zephyrians want to recruit us for their side. That's correct, sir, and according to their communications, they're losing. The Crimson Horde has been winning battles for the past 10 years. The Zephyrians are desperate for new allies. Dr. Brooks, still on the Discovery, made another important discovery. She had been studying the energy signatures of alien ships that had been detected near Earth. Commander Foster, she called out, I think I know why the Zephyrians really came to Earth. What did you find? Foster asked. I've been analyzing the engine signatures of their ships. They're not using normal faster-than-light travel? They're using something much more energy-intensive. Something that would only be necessary if they were running from something. Captain Clark looked at the data. You're saying they didn't come here to offer protection. They came here because they were fleeing. Exactly. And I think I know what they were running from. Dr. Brooks brought up another screen showing deep space scans. There are other ships out there, ships with different energy signatures. They've been following the Zephyrians. Commander Foster grabbed her communication device. I need to report this to Earth immediately. The truth was becoming clear. The Zephyrians had not come to Earth as benevolent protectors. They had come as refugees, fleeing from a war they were losing. They had tried to trick humanity into joining their side by offering protection from threats that either didn't exist, or were not actually threatening Earth, but they had made one critical mistake in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed humans would be like every other species they had encountered, peaceful, easily frightened, and grateful for protection. They had not considered that humans might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. As the Discovery headed back to Earth with its findings, Dr. Brooks looked out at the stars and wondered what would happen when the galaxy learned the truth about humans. She had a feeling the universe was about to become a much more interesting place. The meeting room on the USS Defender looked the same as it had 3 weeks ago, but everything had changed. Ambassador Kethmer stood before the assembled human leadership again, but this time his crystal skin was dim and his large eyes kept looking around the room nervously. Admiral Lisa Carter stood at the head of the table, her expression serious and unforgiving. Behind her, screens showed star maps, intercepted communications, and decoded alien documents. The evidence was overwhelming. Ambassador, Admiral Carter began, her voice carrying the weight of authority, we need to discuss the real reasons why you came to Earth. I do not understand what you mean, Kethmer replied. But his translator device seemed to stutter slightly. Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward with a tablet full of data. We intercepted communications from your homeworld, Ambassador. The Crimson Horde isn't a threat to Earth. They're a threat to you. You came here looking for military allies, not to offer protection. The ambassador's crystal form seemed to shrink. The other Zephyrians in his delegation moved closer together like they were trying to protect each other. Your species was supposed to be different. We expected you to be peaceful like the others, seeking safety and guidance. Dr. Helen Brooks walked to the front of the room with her research tablet. We've been studying galactic history, Ambassador. Every species that joins your protection treaty becomes what we call a client state. They provide resources and soldiers for your wars while you provide very little actual protection in return. That is not true, Kethmore protested, but his voice was weak. It's exactly true, General Patricia Stone interrupted. She activated a holographic display that showed the structure of the Galactic Protection Alliance. Your alliance controls over 200 star systems. Every member species contributes ships, soldiers, and resources to your military. In return, you promise to protect them from threats that rarely actually appear. Colonel Frank Miller pulled up another display showing battle records. We've decoded your military communications, Ambassador. The Protection Alliance has been at war with the Crimson Horde for 15 years. You've been losing consistently. The Ambassador's crystal skin had become almost transparent. The Crimson Horde destroys everything in their path. They take worlds by force. They enslave entire populations. Our fleets cannot stop them alone. Then you should have been honest with us from the beginning, Admiral Carter said firmly. Humans don't respond well to lies and tricks. But we do understand the need for mutual defense against real threats. Captain Morrison activated the main display screen, showing detailed star charts of the conflict zone. Tell us the truth about this Crimson Horde, Ambassador. What are we really dealing with? The alien's voice was barely audible through his translator. They are a confederation of warrior species. They believe that strength gives them the right to rule others. They conquer rather than negotiate. They take rather than trade. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. How are they different from other species in the galaxy? They are like... The ambassador paused, seeming to struggle with the words. They are like humans. They fight first and ask questions later. They see conflict as natural. They do not seek peace. The room fell completely silent. The implications of what the ambassador had just said were staggering. Lieutenant Ben Hayes was the first to speak. Are you telling us there are aliens out there who think and fight like we do? Yes, Kethmore whispered. They are the first species we have encountered that approaches warfare the way humans do, and they are winning. Commander Amy Foster stood up. How long have they been winning? For 10 years, they have taken system after system. Our defensive strategies do not work against them. They do not follow the traditional rules of galactic warfare. What are the traditional rules? Admiral Carter asked. The ambassador's crystal skin flickered weakly. Civilized species fight with honor. They target military installations, not civilian populations. They accept surrender when it is offered. They negotiate when possible. And the Crimson Horde doesn't follow these rules? General Stone asked. No, they fight like humans. They use every advantage. They attack weak points. They do not accept surrender until their enemies are completely defeated. Captain Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. Ambassador, you keep saying they fight like humans. What exactly do you mean by that? The ambassador looked directly at Morrison. They study their enemies and find weaknesses. They use fear as a weapon. They coordinate multiple attacks at once. They never give up, even when losing. They treat war as a science to be perfected. The humans in the room began to understand. The Crimson Horde was successful because they approached warfare the way humans did, while the rest of the galaxy still thought of conflict as a gentleman's game with rules and honor. Dr. Brooks asked, how many species are part of the Crimson Horde? 7 major species and dozens of smaller ones. They recruit aggressively, offering membership to any species that proves itself in battle. And how many species are in your protection alliance? Admiral Carter asked. 234, but most contribute very little to actual military operations. They were never meant to be warriors. The truth was now completely clear. The Zephyrians had built their alliance by recruiting peaceful species who were afraid of galactic threats. These species provided resources and some soldiers, but they had no real understanding of warfare. When they encountered the Crimson Horde, which actually understood military strategy, they were being systematically defeated. "Ambassador," Admiral Carter said slowly, "your alliance is losing because you're trying to fight a war with species that don't know how to fight wars." The ambassador nodded miserably. "That is why we came to Earth. We hoped that humans, being young and inexperienced, would be grateful for protection and guidance. We plan to slowly introduce you to galactic society and eventually recruit you as soldiers." "But you discovered that humans are already warriors," Captain Morrison said. "Yes, and now we are desperate. The Crimson Horde advances closer to our core worlds every month. We need allies who understand warfare." Colonel Miller stepped forward. "What makes you think we would want to get involved in your war?" The ambassador's crystal skin brightened slightly with something that might have been hope. "Because if the Crimson Horde wins, they will eventually come for Earth. They seek to conquer all species that might challenge them. And humans would definitely challenge them." Admiral Carter was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The room waited for her decision. "Ambassador," she finally said, "you made a serious mistake when you first came to Earth. What mistake was that?" Kethmore asked. "You tried to trick us into joining your alliance by offering protection we didn't need. You should have simply asked for help against a real threat." The ambassador looked confused. "Would you have helped us?" Admiral Carter smiled grimly. "Ambassador, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We understand better than anyone that sometimes you have to fight to protect what you care about. If you had been honest about the threat, we might have been willing to help." Dr. Brooks stepped forward. But now we have a problem." "How do we know?" "You're telling the truth about the Crimson Horde?" "How do we know this isn't just another lie?" The ambassador's crystal skin began to glow brighter. "Because they are coming. Our long-range scouts report Crimson Horde fleets moving toward this sector of the galaxy. They will be here within 2 years." The room erupted in concerned voices. Admiral Carter called for quiet. "How do we know you're not lying again?" she asked. The ambassador reached into his robes and pulled out a small crystal device. "This contains all our military intelligence about the Crimson Horde, fleet positions, battle recordings, captured communications. Everything we know about them." He placed the device on the table. "Study it, see for yourself what we face. Then decide if you want to help us or if you want to face them alone." Admiral Carter looked at the device, then at her staff. The decision she made now would determine the future of humanity's relationship with the galaxy, and possibly the survival of human civilization itself. 6 months later, the combined fleets of Earth and the Zephyrian Alliance hung in space above the planet Kepler 442b. The world below was beautiful once, with blue oceans and green continents. Now it was scarred with the dark marks of war, its surface covered with the spreading stains of crimson. Horde occupation. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the command bridge of the flagship UES Retribution, watching the tactical displays update in real time. The ship was the largest humanity had ever built, designed specifically for this mission. Around her, dozens of other human vessels held position, their crews ready for battle. The Crimson Horde fleet had been expecting another typical alien response. They expected diplomatic talks, defensive positions, and eventual retreat. They had conquered 17 star systems using these same tactics. Overwhelming peaceful species with fear and superior numbers, they had not expected humanity, all ships. "This is Admiral Carter," she announced over the fleet communications system. "Remember, we're not here to play defense. We're here to remind the galaxy why human military doctrine works." Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the carrier UZ Vengeance, smiled grimly as his fighter squadrons prepared to launch. "Copy that, Admiral. Wolfpack Squadron is ready to show these aliens what Earth pilots can do." The Crimson Horde ships were impressive to look at. Massive red vessels covered in weapons, built to frighten enemies as much as to destroy them. They had used intimidation and overwhelming force to conquer peaceful civilizations for decades, but they had never faced an enemy that considered warfare to be an art form. "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Carter commanded. "Fire at will." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Kinetic rounds traveling at huge fractions of light speed punched through Horde armor like paper. Fusion missiles with explosive power that made the Zephyrians' plasma weapons look like toys. Electronic warfare systems that turned the Horde's own computers against them. The Crimson Horde's response was immediate and brutal, but their tactics were simple and direct. They relied on straightforward attacks designed to overwhelm through sheer firepower. These methods had worked against peaceful civilizations for centuries. Humanity had spent those same centuries learning to fight each other. "All fighters, execute attack pattern Delta," Morrison ordered. His pilots responded with the precision of trained predators, using the asteroid field around the planet as cover while they struck at the Horde's weak points. The Crimson Horde had expected their enemies to fight like the other species in the galaxy. They expected honor, predictable tactics, and reluctance to cause unnecessary damage. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had no interest in fighting fair. Human ships moved in coordinated groups, covering each other's weaknesses while exploiting every advantage. When Horde ships tried to retreat, human vessels followed them, giving no quarter. When Horde commanders tried to negotiate, human forces continued their attacks. This was not the civilized warfare the galaxy was used to. This was human warfare on the planet's surface. Colonel Frank Miller led the combined ground forces in the first major assault. The Crimson Horde ground troops were physically impressive. 8 feet tall with natural armor and claws designed for close combat, they had terrified every species they had encountered, but they had never faced human infantry doctrine. "Remember," Miller told his troops over the communication system, "they're bigger and stronger than us, but they fight like individuals. We fight as a unit." The battle was swift and decisive. The Crimson Horde soldiers were used to enemies who would run when faced with their size and strength. They expected fear and panic. Instead, they found themselves facing soldiers who had been trained to fight enemies exactly like them. Human infantry moved in small groups, using cover and coordinated fire to take down the larger aliens. When Horde soldiers charged, expecting to scatter their enemies, they found themselves caught in crossfires and ambush. The Horde had been used to winning through intimidation. Humans were not intimidated. In space, the battle was going even worse for the Crimson Horde. Their fleet commander, a massive alien called War Chief Krax, watched his screens in growing disbelief as human ships tore through his formations. "How are they doing this?" Krax roared at his officers. "They are a young species. They should be weak." His tactical officer, a smaller alien with 4 arms, checked his readings again. "War Chief, their weapons are more advanced than anything we've seen, and their tactics, they're not following any known patterns. All ships, focus fire on their flagship," Krax ordered, but the human ships had already anticipated this move. As soon as the Horde fleet began to concentrate on the retribution, human vessels attacked from 3 different directions at once. The Crimson Horde found themselves caught in a perfectly coordinated trap. "War Chief," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Krax growled. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen. She looked calm and confident, nothing like the frightened alien leaders Krax was used to dealing with. "War Chief Krax, this is Admiral Carter of the Human Defense Fleet. You have 1 chance to surrender." Krax laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Surrender? I have conquered 17 worlds. I do not surrender to anyone." "Then you're about to learn why the galaxy fears humanity," Carter replied. "All ships, execute final assault pattern." The human fleet moved with mechanical precision. Every ship knew its role. Every weapon fired at the exact right moment. The Crimson Horde ships, built for intimidation and frontal assault, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. When the last Horde ship fled the system, War Chief Krax's flagship was badly damaged and limping away. For the first time in his military career, he had been completely defeated. Ambassador Kethmer stood beside Admiral Carter on the bridge of the Retribution, his crystal skin glowing with something that might have been hope. Your species, you, are the first to drive them back like this? Admiral Carter nodded, watching the tactical display as human ships moved to secure the star system. Ambassador, you made one mistake when you first came to Earth. What was that? Kethmore asked. You offered us protection, Carter replied. But you never asked if we wanted to be the ones doing the protecting. Dr. Helen Brooks approached with a communication tablet. Admiral, we're receiving messages from 17 different species. Word is spreading about what happened here. What are they saying? Carter asked, but Brooks smiled. They're asking if Earth would consider extending protection to their star systems. Captain. Morrison joined them from his command station, grinning broadly. Looks like the galaxy just learned why you don't mess with humanity. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars, where human ships were already beginning to establish patrol routes around the liberated planet. No, Captain. The galaxy just learned what happens when you give humans a good reason to fight. Over the next few months, the news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been terrorized by the Crimson Horde for years began to hope again. The Zephyrian Protection Alliance found itself with new allies who actually wanted to fight rather than just hide behind defensive walls, Warchief Cracks. Meanwhile, reported back to the Crimson Horde leadership with disturbing news. The humans fight like us, he told the High Council of Warchiefs, but they are better at it. They have turned warfare into a science. The Horde had conquered peaceful species by using fear and superior tactics, but humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. They had fought each other with every weapon and strategy imaginable. When they finally turned their attention to alien threats, they brought that accumulated knowledge with them. Within a year, human-led fleets had liberated 12 star systems from Crimson Horde control. The aliens who had once seemed unstoppable found themselves constantly on the defensive, trying to counter human strategies they couldn't understand. Admiral Carter established the Human Defense Coalition, offering protection to any species willing to contribute resources and follow human military doctrine. Unlike the Zephyrian Alliance, which had been built on fear and dependency, the Human Coalition was built on mutual respect and shared defense. Species that joined the coalition found themselves learning human military tactics. They discovered that warfare wasn't about honor or tradition, but about winning quickly and efficiently while protecting what mattered most. The Crimson Horde, faced with an enemy that fought better than they did, began to fragment. Some war chiefs tried to negotiate peace treaties. Others fled to distant parts of the galaxy. A few even asked to join the Human Defense Coalition. Impressed by humanity's military prowess, Dr. Brooks, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the galaxy, often thought about that first meeting with the Zephyrians. They had come to Earth offering protection from galactic threats, never imagining that Earth would become the galaxy's protector. It's ironic, she told Admiral Carter during one of their regular meetings. They were so afraid of ancient threats, like the Devourers, that they never prepared for threats like themselves. Or like us, Carter replied. The galaxy spent so long being peaceful that they forgot how to fight. When real warriors appeared, they had no defense. Captain Morrison, now promoted to admiral and commanding his own fleet, joined their